All right. Part two on this video. If we went into the sketch and we did a simple extrusion here, your parts will end up with multiple extrusions and or cuts as you're making these things. So let's go in and start another sketch. And you could do it from here, start 2D sketch on the 3D model page. So we'll start a 2D sketch. Now I can go back to my original planes. I can select them over here in the browser, or I can select a surface in my model. Doesn't matter, okay? I can pick whichever surface that I need to sketch on. And so I'm going to go back to my original XY plane. And what I'm looking at the front of the object, and if I turn this, you can see my sketch axes lines are on the back surface there. Okay. Now that we got a model to look at, if I want to look at a certain part, I can click a surface and then it will flip it to that. Which that's great if you got really unusual shaped parts. Okay, so now if I want to add more to this sketch, let's start with an arc. Okay, let's look at our arcs here. Yeah, we'll do a 3-point arc. And I hover over here, you see it darkens that line and gives a constraint to it. And you see this, the edge of it there turned kind of a blue color. Well, what it did is it projected the geometry of that edge. And now I need to pick the other one back there, and then I can set a radius. Okay, now I'm going to turn this around to look at the back. And you can see this yellow line means that's projected geometry, but it didn't project on this side. So a couple of ways we can do this. We can apply a tangent constraint right here. And we can make that part of the arc tangent to that edge. And now let's do the same thing down here. And it made it tangent there. Now you notice the yellow lines means that's projected geometry that I have. I still need to set a, well, before I set a radius, let's try the horizontal constraint. And I'm going to choose that edge and the point of the arc, or the radius point. Okay, so that forced this point to be collinear with that top edge right there. It made them horizontal with each other. Now I still need a radius for my arc here. No, not a radius because that's set. I need a distance out. That's what I need from here to this edge. Come on. Oh, that one's okay. So that one's over constrained. I'm missing a dimension somewhere in this. Oh, I need the radius. Aha. Okay, so two things I could do here. I could apply a radius. That still wouldn't fix that because the radius is set there. So I can do a coincident constraint and choose that point and this line. And that will bring it back so that it ends on that line. When I sketched it originally, it didn't end. So let's display our constraints here. You see we got a tangent arc to line, we got tangent arc to line, horizontal to horizontal there. And then the two endpoints are constrained onto the vertical lines there. Okay, so I finish this sketch and then I go to extrude. and I can change my direction there, and there it is. And so it joined all of those things together into one solid. Okay. Now let's do let's do kind of a weird one here. Start a sketch. Come on. And I'm not going to constrain these. I'm just going to sketch these to show you some of what we can get. And so if I go here to extrude, if you notice, I can pick various parts of what I'm doing here. Okay, so this will extrude just that part of the circle in pink. This will extrude just that part in the pink there. This would just the outside edge. If I were to choose just intersect, I still, I still get the same options. Well, that didn't work out good, did it? I don't know why it didn't. I don't know. I don't understand why it didn't work. So the one thing about sketches is you've got to have a closed loop for it to extrude anything. Okay. Um, let's let's go back in and look at. I'm going to delete that one out of there. And when you go to delete an extrusion, it'll ask you, do you want to delete the consumed sketches and features? If you uncheck that, it will delete the extrusion but leave the sketch. Okay, but I'm going to leave it checked because I don't want to keep either of those things. I want to go in and edit this one, edit sketch. And let's look at the constraints up here. So we've got coincident, which is endpoints, okay, point to point, or point to a line. Collinear, which puts, they're not really parallel, they're on top of each other, they're in line with each other. And then we've got concentric, okay, parallel, which makes the lines parallel to each other, perpendicular. I used horizontal, and then there's a vertical constraint, which will either make a line vertical or a line horizontal, or you can align a point to something horizontal like I did here. And and I clicked it first so you can see the red line there that I've got. That tells you which direction the command is working. Okay. And we got tangent. I had that one. I used that on the arc there. Smooth. You don't use that one much, but it's there. If you need to play with it, you can work out a curve or a spline. Symmetric. It's like mirroring in AutoCAD. It will constrain things to be symmetric about a center line. And then you've got equal, which will make arcs or lines equal to a different one. Okay. And your dimension tool it's an automatic tool. It picks out, are you doing a radius? And then before you place it, if you right click, you can go into dimension type and you can change to diameter or arc length. Okay. And each one is different. If I want to dimension that line and I right click, my options aren't too much because I don't really have any options on a line, you know. So okay. Um, Trim and extend work a lot like AutoCAD. Okay. So you can trim out, you can extend back within the sketch. You can apply a fillet to your sketch. Let me go back to this one. And let's say I wanted to apply a fillet, and it whatever the size is will be the last size that you used most of the time. Okay. And so I can come in here and pick my two lines, and it applies a fillet and makes them tangent. Okay. It works both internally and externally, so you don't have to, option that out. The pull down on it is the chamfer, and here you have three options. So you've either got distance, distance, distance angle, or distance angle in the opposite direction. So we'll just leave it at distance, distance at an eighth of an inch, and pick those two, and it creates the chamfer for you. Okay. A point. We use a points in creating holes. So you'll see some of that when we get around to using the hole tool in a couple of weeks. So I don't want to say much more on that. So let's finish this one. I think we've covered a lot of the stuff here. One thing here, these are some extra type things. This is a construction line, which there are times when you want to use a construction line in Inventor, but for the most part, you're not going to be using construction lines to do, I'm going to say 75% of the work that you're going to do in Inventor, you don't need a construction line for it. The only time that I use construction lines is when I've got a sketch that is so complicated, I've got to have something to measure off of in order to use it. Thus, I use a construction line. Most of the exercises you do will not have a construction line. And then you've got a center line of symmetry that you can put in. But you got to remember, if you use these, you got to remember to turn them off when you're finished using them, or else it will keep doing things. Okay. These commands here, the modify commands, they work just like AutoCAD. Scale, stretch, offset. Offset does, if you've got a closed loop, it will offset the entire loop. Okay, and then you can type in your distance. I'm going to say 0.06 and press enter. Oh, what happened? Oh, it doesn't like it. Okay. It didn't finish with this because that just got to be too big. It didn't work in there. The chamfer doesn't work anymore up here. So the offset command works. You don't have to tell it a distance beforehand like you do in AutoCAD. You select your curve first, and it's picking that entire curve. Let's try if I hold down my Shift key or my Control key. Nope. It's going to see if there was an option. Okay, so if I turn off Loop Select, I can select just one instance there to offset. Cool. Okay, so that's another way to do that. All right, so let's finish this up. Okay. It caused some errors up here with some of my stuff. And you can see the error message that I've got there. Ah, that's why. Because I put in that one extrusion and in the top of it, it doesn't like that. So if I open this extrusion to go edit feature, and I would have to cancel my sketch. Okay, so let's go back in and edit my sketch. And let's take that constraint right there and delete it. And let's apply a coincident constraint from this arc to that line. It still didn't do it. Okay, so if I take that and delete that, I'm going to grab the end of it and pull it down. It's still tangent. Okay. My horizontal constraint there is no longer valid, so I'm going to delete it. And now let's go coincident from there to there. And let's give it a radius, 0.65. Trying to think what other dimensions I might need, because I'm tangent on both ends. Oh, I'm still in my dimension command. Okay, so the other dimensions needed are going to be on the construction lines there. So if I go with the auto dimension, and let's uncheck constraints and just go dimensions, okay? And if I apply that, I can see there that what it is, it's the construction line that it's picking up, and those other things which really don't affect, it doesn't affect my drawing. Okay, so I'm going to finish that. And I'm going to open my extrusion to go edit feature, select profile. Oh, because that curves are in there. So let's go back into edit sketch. Because these two lines used to be joined together down at the bottom, and they're no longer joined. So I can either draw, I can either physically draw lines down and around, or I can go project geometry and then select that arc and give it a yellow line and then finish that up. And now that worked. Okay. Now let's say we we need to make an extrusion out on this side. So I can go start a sketch and pick this surface. And I'm just going to do something simple here. Okay. And apply a couple of dimensions. All right, and now if I had not have picked that corner to start with and it had been out here, I could use my collinear constraints to apply this to the backside and this to the bottom. So, but I'm going to finish that. And now let's look at it. And we go extrude, and whichever direction I choose to extrude it in will determine what happens. Now you see that little notch out. It's not going to cut the, oh yeah, because it switched to cut. But I want to keep it as extrude, or join, if you will. But I just changed the direction to go back into it. So let's say OK with that. All right. Now, if I want to put some holes in this, we'll cover the hole command next week. Let's just do another sketch here. And I'm going to do a circle, and I want it to be concentric with this circle. So I can highlight that to get it to highlight, and then go straight to there and get the green dot, and that tells me it's concentric. And now I can give it a size. And you'll have to watch, are you dealing with diameter or radius, okay, when you're dealing with these. Okay, now it's fully constrained because I gave it a diameter and I gave it a concentric constraint based on this arc. If I had drawn it somewhere out here, I could apply a concentric constraint. Come on. And it would move it and make it concentric. Okay, so I've got that sketched in, so I'm going to finish that, go extrude, but I want to cut, and then it tells me how far it's going to cut. Now, with cuts in particularly, you've got some other options here. I mean, they're there on extrusions also. You can go through all, and it doesn't require a distance. Okay, it just goes through that whole surface. If I give it a distance, or I say 2, it's going to ask me to what face do I want to cut it through to. And this is rather simple, so we'll select that one. Okay. Or I could go to next, which would basically be the same thing. Okay. So I'm going to back it up and make it an extrusion, and then change it back to a cut and go to next, and it just automatically picks up the next face. Okay, and so that's how you make a cut, if you will. Um, yeah, I think that covers a lot of what we need for this week. Um, you're just gonna have to play around with it a little bit, uh, work on, always pick the correct plane that you're going to sketch with to start with. Think about how you're going to build this thing step by step. Don't try to do too many steps at one time. Um, think about how you're going to work through the different the different shapes and stuff. Because to start with, all of our shapes are going to be fairly simple to get you used to using the commands. But think about what surface plane you want to start with, because when you go to place it into a drawing, this front is the front view of your drawing. It makes it easier. And that is the right view of your drawing. That's the top view of your drawing. Now we can change those around in a drawing, but it sure makes it simpler if you keep it correctly here in your model. Okay, so I think that covers most everything you're going to need to get you used to using the software this week. There's some exercises with videos that go along with those exercises to walk you through those. So, even though there's no in-class assignments on this class, if you got issues, come to the lab, get some help from myself or the lab tutors, okay?